The alarming, and some of them I think, I don't know, too alarming headlines we see coming out of Europe, in Germany and Austria, and then the intimation that this is our future, or could be a possible future for us. What's happening over there? Why is it happening? Is it something that we can expect here, or dread to expect here?
Well, first of all, let's put Germany in perspective. They have about 33 cases per 100,000 people per day. We're at 24. So Germany's not in much worse shape than us. They have regions of that country with very dense spread that are getting overwhelmed by the infection, mostly in the old East Germany, the eastern part of that country, and there are regions that are very under-vaccinated. So we've known that Delta finds its way into pockets of vulnerability, and Germany has big pockets of vulnerability in terms of low vaccination rates in parts of that country. Now, overall, when you look at their vaccination rates, it looks pretty good. They look like they're more vaccinated than us, but the people who are unvaccinated tend to be concentrated in certain regions. Germany's also had a lot less prior infection than the U.S. We need to account for the fact that we've had big waves of infection, and probably more than 50% of Americans have been infected with COVID at this point. Germany's nowhere near those levels. They've largely controlled this infection better than us historically. So overall, even though their vaccination rate is slightly higher than ours, their overall population level immunity is probably substantially lower than ours. We've earned a lot more immunity the hard way. A lot of people in this country have unfortunately been infected with this virus.
We read about variants. Any variants on your radar right now? We don't know much about. There's a new one I saw, but they haven't seen it much even since October. And it has a different spike protein, but it's unclear whether it's more contagious, less contagious. Anything that you know there that you can enlighten us on?
Yeah, nothing that we've seen. The variants that are emerging are mostly within the Delta lineage. And so it speaks to this question that you and I have talked about before, is whether Delta is going to become the dominant strain and future mutations are within that Delta lineage. They're sort of sub-mutations, sub-lineages of Delta. And that would argue in the direction that we may eventually switch this vaccine over to a Delta backbone vaccine. We haven't seen anything that's more contagious than Delta or seems to have a competitive advantage that defeats the vaccines or mutates the spike protein in a way that it evades prior immunity. And we're looking very hard. The fact that we haven't found such a variant yet is encouraging. It's going to be hard for something to come along that's substantially more contagious than Delta. What you worry about is that eventually you get something that partially escapes the immunity offered by prior infection and the vaccinations. And probably that will happen over time. But hopefully you don't see a dramatic shift in this virus, and we certainly haven't seen that yet.
So, Scott, in 3 years, what do you see? Possible annual shots? Do you see the therapeutics being in pill form so that we feel much better about our options if you know, we do see it come every winter and we can at least deal with it? Do you see a lot of people still wearing masks, walking around outside, driving alone in their cars?
Look, I see this being something that's managed like the flu, where a lot of people have already had it. There's a high level of immunity in the population. We have effective vaccines. We have effective oral therapeutics. We change our practices. And we change our practices not only because we're still fearful of COVID, but the twin risks of flu and COVID circulating alongside each other each winter is going to force us to have to be more vigilant around respiratory pathogens. But this is not going to dominate our lives like the way it is right now. And I think after this Delta wave, on the back end of this Delta wave, when this is done sweeping across the population and fully 60% of Americans have probably had COVID at that point and the rest have been vaccinated, this is going to become far less fearsome. You're going to still see cases every day, but hospitalizations and deaths are going to fall dramatically like they are in the UK, and they are falling in the US. There is a decoupling between infections and hospitalizations, and this becomes something that is still deadly, but manageable, something that we have the tools to manage far more effectively than we have in the past.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.